Hello, I'm Harvey, and I recently had the pleasure of visiting BENDER'S bike shed. It's in Tasmania, south of Australia, and Peter's house is just below Hobart, and this is his bike shed behind the house. And when you look up the Derwent River towards Hobart, the view is fantastic. And this is Peter's house overlooking the Tasman Sea. And up behind the house is the bike shed. And here is Peter Bender.
So this is my bike shed. We've got lots of Brough Superiors, and I think I've got 18 Brough Superior bikes. I've also got a Brough Superior car, which isn't here at the moment. And there's about 15 Vincents there, as well as quite a few other interesting bikes. This is the oldest bike I've got in the collection. It's a 1915 Humber. It's very rare. It's a 750 water-cooled bike, 3-speed. And it's the only one in the world that goes. There's 2 others, but apparently they're not going at the moment, so a very, very rare bike. So this is a very unusual bike, this one. This is a radial engine Brough, but this never went into production. Brough were experimenting with different engine configurations because both Matchless and JEP, who made all the engines for Broughs, were going to discontinue making V-twins. So Brough started experimenting with different engines, including this radial, to replace the V-twin engines. In the end, they didn't go ahead with it, but so this motorbike is actually not a real complete Brough. It's an engine that they were experimenting with, and when the factory closed down, the manager of the factory took it home and turned it into a motorbike. Okay, well, this is a pretty interesting bike. This is a 1938 SS80 with a petrol tube sidecar. It's a pretty interesting bike. This one, the guy who owned it bought it just before the war. He went away to the war, but he was concerned that the military were requisitioning people's bikes to use for the war. So what he did, he pulled it all apart and put it up in the roof of his shed, in the loft of his shed. And it was all in bits, and it stayed there till he came home from the war, but he had a family and so on and got busy and never put it back together again. So after he died, his children ended up selling it. So it only got put back together about probably 10 years ago, and the bike would have only done probably 10,000 miles or something like that, so it's a very low mileage bike.
And that's the bike I took Marcus out in.
It is indeed, yes. A very comfortable sidecar. It's got great springs, very nice to ride. This is a 680 Brough. It's quite an interesting one. This was owned by a carpenter for about 40 or 50 years. He used to use it with a sidecar on the side, and he'd put all his carpentry tools in it. And when he needed a part for the bike, if something was broken or whatever, he quite often made a replacement part out of wood. So you can see the bike's got wooden number plates. He did have a wooden primary chain case, which is a beautiful job. I've still got that upstairs. And the seat was made out of wood when I got it, but that was a bit uncomfortable. So the bike was actually known in Brough circles as the Wooden Wonder. All right, well, the SS100 is the rarest of the Broughs, particularly the 20s models, which had the JEP engine. And these are certainly the most collectible because there's not many of these in existence. They would have all got melted down to be made into Spitfires during the war. But so this is a 28 model, 27, 26 and 25. So very rare bikes indeed. Well, this is probably the most interesting one. It's the 1925 SS100. The reason it's an important bike is that it's got racing history. It was raced by a person called C.F. Edwards back when it was new. And it's raced at Brooklands. It's also done a lot of beach racing. It was sold as a sand racer. Very fast bike. The SS100s would do 100 miles an hour. And this is the very first year they made them. So this bike's 100 years old. They're a JEP engine, and they're total loss lubrication, so the oil doesn't get circulated. So you've got new cool oil coming through the engine all the time. But the oil just goes into the sump and just gets pumped out the breather. But yeah, very, very amazing engines for 1925 that could do 100 miles an hour. So this bike would do 100 miles an hour in 1925. This is the first year they made the SS100. And the speed limit on the roads in 1925 was 20 miles an hour, so it could do 5 times the speed limit. so it could do 5 times the speed limit. So that's what the SS100 stands for, Super Sport, 100 miles an hour. And each one was tested before the purchaser took it by one of the road testers, normally at Brooklands I think, but sometimes on public roads. And they would all do 100 miles an hour, and people were given the certificate when they bought the bike. You can see the 1925 bikes are a lot slimmer, a lot sportier. When we get to when the Broughs had nearly finished, this is 1939 SS100, so the same model, but these bikes are a lot bigger, and they've turned from a really sporting bike into a Grand Tourer. So a bit more comfortable to ride. They've got a better seat. They went from a JAP engine to a matchless engine. Matchless engines are a lot nicer to use. They recirculate the oil. They're just an easier engine to live with. And great touring bike. You could ride this bike all day without getting tired. This particular one's got plunger rear suspension, so it gives a bit more comfort. A lot of them had just a rigid frame, so there's no suspension on the back other than from the seat. Yeah, so this bike's got the plunger rear suspension, but they also had the option of the swing arm rear suspension made by Bentley and Draper, or B&D as it was known. And these are the most comfortable of them to ride, so it's a similar rear suspension to a Vincent. The bike has a roll-on centre stand. Brough actually invented centre stands, and they are very, very easy to use. I'll just take it off and flick it up, and to put it on the stand requires no effort whatsoever, so you just put it down and there you go. It's easy as that.
Why doesn't everybody do that?
Well, I don't know. Even on a modern bike, if you've got a centre stand on a modern bike, they're nowhere near as easy as a Brough stand. They're just incredibly well designed. The way the radius works, they lift as they roll forward, so it's a very smart design. Yep,
And even I can do it.
That's it.
Look at that.
Beautiful.
Amazing.
Well, this is a very rare bike. It's called a Brough BS4. Which stands for 4-cylinder, and George Brough had experimented with some other 4-cylinder engines prior to this one. They made a transverse V4, which wasn't very successful, with their own design engine, and they also used a company called Motor Sacoche to build them an inline 4, but that had some problems as well, so they decided to see if they could come up with something that was a bit more proven. So they actually used an Austin 7 car engine. And the interesting thing about that is because it's a car engine, they use the car clutch, just a dry car clutch, and the car gearbox, which has the tail shaft coming out the back. And because it comes out the centre line of the engine, it meant that it was difficult to drive the wheels because they wanted to use the shaft drive. So instead of coming up with some other complicated system, they just used 2 wheels. So, which is highly unusual. It's the only motorbike ever designed with 2 wheels that close together at the back. So it's mainly designed for sidecar use, but quite a few of them, there was only 10 made, but some of them were used as solo machines. This one was sold as a solo machine. It was bought by a fellow called Hobart Tasmania in 1932, and he used it solo. There are only 10 made, there's 7 in existence, and only 3 that are matching numbers, and this is one of the matching numbers bikes. It had been sent to a wreckers yard in about the 1950s, and a fellow called Frank Vague, who lived at Bodmin Moor, was a farmer that used to collect Broughs up when he saw them in scrap yards and that sort of thing. Took it home, and he used it for a little while, but then it lay in his shed as he got older. He lived till he was about 90. And along with about 12 other bikes that were sitting in the shed rusting away. And when he died, they eventually got sold by Bonhams, and a fellow called Armin Mueller from Germany purchased the bike, and I was actually the losing bidder at the time, and he restored it to the condition it's in now. So I said to him, if you ever want to sell it, let me know, and he said he would sell it for quite a large sum of money. And so I purchased this bike about 6 or 8 months ago. So we can even start it up. It's got electric start. It's also got reverse gear because it's a car gearbox. which would be handy if you've got a sidecar on it. But yeah, pretty unusual for a bike in 1932 to have electric start. Turn the ignition on, we'll go to the starter button down here. Now, if you notice that if I put it into gear, that's forward gear with the wheel rotating the normal way. And if I do this, now it's in reverse.
That's pretty clever.
It is. We've got the full range of Vincents. We've got most models. We've got the A, B, C and D. Haven't got every single model, but we've certainly got most of them. There's a D Shadow, for example. This C Shadow here is very original. It's only done 8,900 original miles. It was originally delivered to South Australia, and it's very well documented that mileage is correct. Still got all the original CAD plated bolts in it, and you know, pretty well the whole bike is quite original. This is a red and black Vincent Rapide with the touring guards. It's quite rare. They only made, I think, about 36 or something like that in the red and black. They made a bit over 100 that were all red, but yeah, both are very nice looking bikes. It's got the touring handlebars, so a bit higher bars, which makes it a very comfortable machine for touring on. So this is a Series A Rapide. This is one of my favourite bikes. Very fast for its day. These would do 110 miles an hour in the late 1930s. This is a 1939 model. And I've just done the Vincent National Rally on it, which was over 3,000 kilometres. I think altogether, since everybody's been here, we've done about 3,500 kilometres. And really no problems to speak of with it. Starts nearly first or second go all the time. And they're just a very reliable bike. They handle it incredibly well. The engine's fantastic, got fantastic acceleration. Probably one of the most advanced bikes ever for its day. I think it's probably the most advanced bike that was ever made for that time. So really nice bike. This is a Vincent Grey Flash, built in 1950. They only made about 31 grey flashes. These were the Vincent 500cc single-cylinder racing bike. But this one's quite special in that they had orders for 2 bikes to be road registerable, 2 of the grey flashes to be road registerable. So this is one that came out with lights on it and a kickstarter. Most of them would have ran start the bikes. But this one was made to be able to ride on the road, so a very rare bike indeed, with only a couple of them being made. This is a 1935 TT Comet. Up till 1935, Vincent were using other people's engines, either JAP or Rudge, and they used to have lots of trouble with the other engines. When they raced them, they'd commonly blow up. So Phil Irving had just come to the factory just not long before this, and he said he could design a better engine, which he did. So he designed the engine for this bike, which was much more robust. And this bike was raced in the TT for quite a few years. Originally with a standard engine, and then the next year with a supercharged engine. So it had a Zoller supercharger on it, and raced in the Isle of Man TT. Apparently the superchargers used to overheat. So they did away with it and just went back to a conventional engine after that. We don't know the exact racing history because Vincent didn't keep track of which bike was which. So there was five of these made with the first engines designed by Phil Irving. So a very historical bike, and yeah, in very good condition. Well, this is the most famous bike I've got in the collection. This is a Jack Errett 1951 Vincent Black Lightning. Only about 30 Black Lightnings were made. This is probably the most original one on the planet, and it had the Australian land speed record. So he also raced it for many years. He was the Australian sidecar champion. He did 141.5 miles an hour to get the record, but in a couple of practice runs, or in a practice run, he'd got up to 149.6, but it wasn't one of the official runs. The reason he didn't go faster in the runs is he actually broke something inside the gearbox. So he had to change gears with the gear indicator during the official run because he only had permission to close the road for a certain amount of time, so they didn't have time to fix it. So he attached with a set of locking pliers a handle onto here so he could change gears by hand doing the official run, which is why he didn't get up to the faster speed he'd done prior to that. The 149.6 I think is about the same speed Rolly Free did when he had his leathers on before he stripped down to his bathing suit to do his run, which went over 150. So this bike would have been the equal to Rolly Free's bike in terms of performance. So Tony McAlpine was the original owner of the bike. He went to the Brough factory and they let him put the bike together and he tuned the bike. And apparently he was a very good tuner of bikes and could get them to go very fast. So when the bike was finished, they took it to the Great Gransden Airport airstrip and they gave it a race against the factory racing bike Gunga Din. And by the time they got to the end of the airstrip, this bike was 30 yards ahead of Gunga Din, doing about 130 miles an hour by the time they got to the end. I think it was 130 miles an hour in third gear. So a very fast bike indeed. Yeah, so we do run the bike every now and then when we've got visitors, just so they can hear it and see it running. We actually took it to Gunnedah, where the record was done back in 1953 for the film Speed is Expensive, and it's featured in the film quite a lot.
Eric decided to go for broke and set a new Australian land speed record.
Well, that was fun, wasn't it? I hope you enjoyed it. One of these days we'll go back and do the rest of the bikes, but there are just too many to do them justice. So I hope you enjoyed the video and we look forward to another occasion. Bye for now.